Welcome into Tuesday Night Takes, our second episode and your number one NFL podcast, posting every single week. Thank you for listening on YouTube or Spotify. They will be posted there each week. Nathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm doing well. I think we should just go ahead and get straight into our first topic, our review of the
Absolutely.
Wildcard round. We're going to start out with Cleveland and Houston. We're going to go as they went through the weekend, starting with, obviously, the first game. And, I mean, Houston, this was unexpected, an onslaught from Houston. I think a lot of people thought this game would be very close. I thought it was a good matchup entering in, but it simply was not. It did not play out well. What do you got on this game?
Sure, yeah. It definitely was an interesting matchup to see the powerful Texans offense led by a rookie quarterback facing the Browns, who all season their defense has sort of been what's gotten them this far, given that they've had so many quarterback issues this year. They had to call Joe Flacco out of essentially retirement, and he played great for him. But no, no one expected this game to go this way. I don't think it could have gone either way. I'm sure it was probably about 50-50 between the Texans and the Browns as to who would win. But to say that it would be a blowout like it was, 45-14, I mean, gosh, no one saw that coming.
Not at all.
I mean, the Texans, their offense was just clicking. I mean, everything was going right for them. It really was just one of those games, and the Browns just couldn't keep up. Joe Flacco wasn't going to keep them in that game, especially because they didn't have that defense going for them at all.
Yeah, I think neither of us were shocked at Joe Flacco's fall off. We both expected him to do that at some point, whether it was this game or maybe another one down the line. But just weren't really shocked that a guy like him, I mean, he was a backup and a bench player for a reason for a few years now.
Sure.
The run he had this year, it was special, but it had to come to an end, and pretty brutally at that. It really comes down to the fact that Houston just played well on both sides of the ball, and Cleveland's defense, to me, is really a big factor here. They didn't show up at all. Considering they're supposed to be one of the best units in the league, is pretty tough. I mean, they have a Defensive Player of the Year front runner, Myles Garrett, who showed up none. The rest of the defense didn't show up. It was just bad. And I've got a couple stats here that are pretty interesting I'd like to share. Flacco, he had a passer rating of 31.7 when pressured, and that made him 6 for 10, and that includes the 82-yard pick six to Steven Nelson. That was pretty much the kill shot of the game. That added up to, what was it? It would have been 24-14 prior to that, and that really just closed it out. Also, Christian Harris, a guy who's played for 2 years and really just hasn't done much in this time, but this game finished with 8 total tackles, a sack, an interception, and that he also returned for a touchdown. Just a crazy game from him. Good breakout from him. And glad to see it happening for the young guy. And also, one more. Derek Stingley matched up with Amari Cooper, 80% of Flacco's dropbacks, and Amari Cooper did not have a single catch when guarded by Derek Stingley. So the young guys, those two, CJ Stroud, really stepped up this game and really showed out. Anything else you got to add on this game?
Yeah. No, I mean, it was just simple as that. One team showed up and the other one didn't. Nothing else to it. And the Texans sure did show up. They are not a team. They're not a team I want to be playing right now in the AFC. They've got. I mean, there's. We'll talk about them further ahead. But the 3 other teams remaining in the AFC are all 3 there's some juggernauts for sure. But I mean, Houston's got nothing to lose. They're not supposed to even be here. No one expected them to go 10-7. So for them to even be here right now, I mean, they have got nothing. They've got nothing to lose. So having to play a team like that in the playoffs is not something to look forward to at all.
Yeah, and I mean, this is also a topic for a little bit later, but you get a team like Baltimore who you're playing who's not got a good track record in the playoffs, so that could be potentially favorable for them. But we'll go ahead and move on to our second game of the weekend, Kansas City versus Miami. 26-7 final. This is once again just a case of one team unable to show up. And this was a big problem for Tua.
Yeah.
There was concern of him playing in cold weather, and well, that clearly turned out to be an issue. The
Hmm.
Dolphins only averaged 3.1 yards per play outside of the Tyreek Hill 52-yard touchdown, so that's pretty bad on their part. What do you
Yeah.
got here?
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Tua, oh my gosh, excuse me, my goodness, that voice crack was brutal. Oh my gosh. Um, anyways, um, goodness. Tua now moves to 0-5 in games with 45-degree temperatures or colder. And so you stick him in -7-degree weather. That's what you get. 7 points, and you can't really, he's not really that responsible for the touchdown that much. It was a 52-yard touchdown, but it was if you watched it, it was kind of one of those classic little moonshot, and Tyreek runs underneath it and then breaks a few tackles and scores. But I mean, it just came down to the fact that Miami is not. They just can't get it done in cold weather. It's such a shock for them whenever they go from playing in that warm weather Miami and they go up to Kansas City where it's blistering cold, and Tua just, I mean, it's a reoccurring thing at this point, just seemingly can't get it done. And even they had an opportunity to get the Chiefs on a down year where their offense is at best it's all right, and then most of the time it's dysfunctional because their skill players can never come through. They had an opportunity. Miami's got a fantastic offense, but they could not get their running game going, which is what's been the key to their success all year. And it's just what you get. You get the Chiefs playing at home. Their defense is going. Miami can't get anything going on offense, and it's just a snowball that piles up, constantly going downhill, and you can't stop it.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, the defensive injuries for Miami really hurt. I think this game could have played out a little differently had they had some of those defensive players. Obviously, I believe Xavier Howard was out. They've lost every edge rusher they've had on their roster effectively.
Hmm.
Not to mention Andrew Van Ginkel, a guy who's playing well at his linebacker spot, and then they asked him to play edge, even though it's not really his position. Lost him, lost Jerome Baker. I mean, I'm not saying they would have won, but definitely a big loss going into the game.
Yeah.
One final stat I'd like to add here as well. The Chiefs had six drives in the red zone and were only able to put 2 of them in the end zone. They were also one of 3 in Week 17 against the Cincinnati Bengals. That's just not very good. And going ahead for them playing Buffalo, they've got to be able to score points. And if they're not able to capitalize on that, that could be a huge issue for them against Buffalo.
Yeah, that's just what happens when you don't have the skill guys to get it done like Kansas City normally does. And Travis Kelce's showing his age.
A little bit.
But yeah, I mean, when you don't have the dudes, Rashee Rice he's starting to come into his own. But whenever you don't have the dudes all around you, all around your quarterback, you're gonna struggle in the red zone. It's just less space for that defense to have to defend. So
Absolutely.
they'll have to work around it.
Yep. We got to go one more game here to get to Sunday. This was obviously supposed to be the second game in Sunday, but it ended up being the first due to the Steelers-Bills being moved from weather, snow everywhere in that game. By the time the game started, there was still snow in the stands. What do you got here?
Yeah, it's funny. The first 3 games, you can take away that I don't think anyone expected Kansas City Miami to be a 3-score game, but you see the reoccurring theme of games not at all going the way they were expected to. And this would be one of them. This would probably be the biggest shock of them all. Dallas just gets beaten up at home by Green Bay, who, they had to fight and claw all the way to the very end to get in, just to get that 7 seed. And then they march into Dallas and just manhandle them. I mean, I don't. Their defense just didn't show up at all. It's weird. I think Jordan Love must just be a whole lot better than we realize, or Matt LaFleur is an absolute genius, because they didn't even have to use their top 2 receivers, Christian Watson or Jaden Reed, to get it done. They combined for a catch and 9 yards.
Yeah.
It was the Romeo Dobbs show, and part of it's on the Dallas defense. They just couldn't stop a thing. There were holes in their coverage all game, and then on the other side of the ball, Dak did not look like regular season Dak at all. He definitely reverted back to that playoff Dak that we've seen many times. Turned the ball over twice for him I believe that both of his picks came in the first half. Yeah, they both came in the first half, one of which was returned for 6. I mean, it was just a disastrous game for Dallas, and Green Bay pounced on the opportunity.
Yeah, for Dallas, I mean, this was like you said, a rough game. And I don't want to hear anything about Dak Prescott having a good game statistically. Before the fourth quarter, he only had about 190 yards and 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions, and they were down 41-16. So I don't care about Dak Prescott's stats. He played awful. This team played awful. It felt like CeeDee Lamb dropped probably the first 3 to 4 passes thrown to him, and he was supposed to be one of the better receivers in the league coming into this. And after the year he put up, and he does that, that's problematic. Right. Then you have, once again, another Defensive Player of the Year frontrunner in Micah Parsons doing an absolute no-show, as well as the defense is supposed to be one of the better units, however they may be that. But just not a lot from this team that had so much hype. And I think you could definitely argue this was the best chance Dallas has had to make a Super Bowl since probably the last time they won a Super Bowl. And they completely just lost the whole thing. And I think you have to have some serious conversations, probably the most serious conversations out of any team going into this offseason about Dallas, the coach, the quarterback, the team, all of it together. This is going to be pretty rough.
Yeah, so Dallas just did not come to play. However, you can't take away from Green Bay either because they came out, their offense was just a well-oiled machine. Jordan Love had I think it'd be safe to say this is the best game of his career up to this point.
In terms of the pressure and everything, absolutely.
Right, yeah, it's a playoff game. You really got to come through in the playoffs, and he certainly did. 157 passer rating, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. You can attribute some of this to big plays that he had, but he certainly didn't lose him the game, and you can't dock him for that. That Packers offense looked just phenomenal. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how they look against a much more solid defense in San Francisco next week.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have Aaron Jones. He had, I believe it was 21 carries for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. He ran all over them. Their run defense has been a bit of a problem for them, and clearly it is. He now has an interesting stat I found. He has 9 touchdowns in 4 games against Dallas, which was kind of a homecoming for him. If I'm understanding correctly of what the broadcaster said, I think they said that he grew up a Cowboys fan and just like idolized Emmitt Smith as his, the guy he wanted to be. So that's pretty huge for him. Also, pointing out the receivers for Jordan Love and the Packers. Romeo Doubs, 6 catches, 6 targets, 150 yards, 1 touchdown. Luke Musgraves, 3 for 3. 52 a touchdown. Dontavian Wicks, 2 for 2, 25 a touchdown. Tucker Kraft, 3 for 2, 15 yards. I mean, they all pretty much caught everything they were throwing at them, and they were all multiple times wide open, no one covering them. Embarrassing defense from the Cowboys. Pretty rough. And we're talking about Romeo Doubs. We're talking about Dontavian Wicks. We're not talking about A.J. Brown. We're not talking about D.J. Moore. These are, they're not nobodies, but who are they? Like, they're not super relevant receivers. And, there's all these topics of this guy needs more help, but he's got a potentially top 15 receiver and a good tight end in Chicago. Not that I'm pointing any fingers, but he needs more help. But these guys who are effectively no ones get nothing done. It's just interesting. That's a topic for another day. But it's just, you get guys like this going off against a good defense, supposedly. And one of the interesting things I think is the 2 teams that got absolutely smoked this weekend had debatably 2 of the better defenses in the league. Top 3 to 5 probably is what everybody talks about, at least. They also had 2 guys who were front runners for Defensive Player of the Year that didn't show up in either game. What are we doing? Like, they just didn't show up. Neither of them, I think they both had a tackle, a singular tackle or so. Just not good showings from Dallas or Cleveland. But, yeah, it's a rough one. Anything else you got on this game?
The only other thing I wanted to point out is that Green Bay's, I'll say, top two receiver. Well, Christian Watson and Jaden Reed combined for 4 targets, 1 catch, and 9 yards,
Yeah,
which is interesting. Christian Watson's supposed to be that number one receiver for them,
he's been
and
hurt a lot
Jaden
this year.
he has, but he's the tall. He's kind of the unicorn receiver that they have. He's not like a um, you don't find a Christian Watson type receiver just on the side of the road somewhere. You don't find those everywhere. They didn't need him to come through and have huge plays here and there. And Jaden Reed this year's been their big play guy. He's done a lot of work for them in their offense, and he didn't touch the ball once. And they still hang up 48. So I think it's very, very promising for the Packers that they can succeed this way, without their star skill players coming through and having big performances.
Absolutely. I agree with you. That's all I have on Green Bay, so I guess we can go
Hmm.
to the last Sunday game, which was probably the best game of the week. I mean, in terms of how close it was and everything like that. Um, it's
Hmm.
obviously LA Rams going to Detroit. Matthew Stafford going back to Detroit, I believe, for the first time since they were traded, him and Jared Goff. This was a passing game for sure. Not a ton of rushing yards on either side, and quite a few passing yards on both sides. Um, you get 79 total rushing yards from Detroit, 68 total rushing yards from Los Angeles, but then both were over 250 and 350 yards passing. So what you got here?
This was a very interesting game. If you watch the first half, there's kind of fireworks everywhere. It was high scoring, and it was one that I would have thought was gonna be a who has the ball last type of game, where they're going back and forth the entire game, and then whoever has the ball last either kick a field goal or go in for a touchdown, they win it there. But the script really flipped in the second half. You go into halftime and Detroit was up 21-17, and we have a final 24-23. It's just like, I don't know. It's just crazy to me how the game can flip so quickly like that in the NFL.
Yeah,
Um, but it was really, I think it was really just a matter of Detroit had more guys, and they were able to pull through. Um, it was an odd game though. It was really a weird game. I think it really went about how people expected it to. Um, a lot of people liked the Rams at -3, I believe. It
something
started
like
at
that.
Rams -5 in the very by the very. I think we talked about this last week, but in just 24 hours, it flipped to Rams -3. So a lot of people thought this was going to be a close game, and it was. It was. 'Cause I think a lot of people aren't quite sold on Detroit quite yet, and the Rams have been hot lately. But no, it was definitely a really good game. It's just the second half wasn't quite as entertaining as we might have hoped it would be, like the first half was. Um, but I mean, Detroit came through. They came through and got the win,
Yeah,
against a Rams team that is certainly not one to be slept on, judging by how they finished the season 4-0.
hmm,
They won their last four. They're as hot as any team in the league.
yeah.
But the Lions got it done.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest effects of this game honestly came from Aiden Hutchinson. He's been on fire lately. He finished the final, I believe, 2 games of the regular season with 5 sacks, and then
Hmm.
he had 2 sacks and 4 quarterback hits in this game. While Jared Goff, his quarterback, was relatively untouched the whole game. It seemed like. Um, that's pretty big. You get a defensive player like that who's constantly making plays, and that's huge for them. And then you
Hmm.
know, the Lions, their secondary did get picked apart, especially in the first half. That's how the scoring happened. I mean, but
Yeah.
that's what the Lions do. They're okay with that because they're going to stop your run. You're not going to run the ball on them. However, you're going to throw the ball over their head a few times. And that
Hmm.
hurt them, but obviously didn't play too much. And, Goff, heck of a game. 9 of 9, 10 of 10, I believe, to start the game. And,
Hmm.
I think he went 22 of 27 or something like that
He did.
total.
Yep.
So that
Mm-hmm.
heck of a game from Jared Goff. That's all I have. If you don't have anything else, close out that one.
Yeah. Jared Goff's lucky that his defense was able to just barely pull through. We'll talk about the later games for the divisional round later, but yeah, for the Lions, I'd just be worried about that defense. They were able to just barely pull through in a game that they should have won. So I wouldn't be I'd be a little bit concerned as a Lions fan going forward, but they got their first playoff win in 34 years, so they can, we can let them rejoice in that for a little bit.
And on your thing where you said that they got, they barely pulled it out, I agree. But I think this was a specific matchup where everything drives the right way, where this one's going to be a close game no matter if one team is better than the other. It's just one of those games that, because of Stafford coming back, they're not going to lose by 20. It's just not going to happen. And maybe they are substantially worse. Maybe they aren't. Whatever. I'm not saying they are. It's just not going to happen. And maybe they go and face the 49ers or something and are able to beat the tar out of them. Not saying they will, but you get the point. Either way, we can go to our Monday games. Obviously, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. And as a Steelers fan, I want to talk about this one a little bit myself. Many Steelers fans were very disappointed and said, oh, we won and done again or whatever. Were we supposed to be in those playoffs after Mitch Trubisky lost 3 straight games to the 3 worst teams possible? Like, let's be real. Being in the playoffs was a good enough, like, we overachieved simply by that. And I'm not saying I'm happy with a losing season once again, but Mason Rudolph playing quarterback. It's just like Joe Flacco. He's not going to do it forever. Let's be real. And Mason played well. He played well. And I really think going into halftime, this game was a lot closer than it seemed. George Pickens fumbled on a very odd play in the first half. He was hit, but the ball was never touched. It just simply popped out of his arm as he went down to the ground. And that set them up in within their 20-yard line, I believe. If he
scored the very next play, yeah.
If he doesn't do that, it's 14-7 going into halftime. That's not nearly. This game was the most – I feel like this is honestly the closest 31-17 game I've ever seen. Our defense played well overall. The running game didn't get involved like it usually has, and that's why the Steelers lost 100%. The running game had to dominate like they had before, and they didn't. Obviously, and like the Buffalo Bills are a better team. Steelers fans going into this, how do we lose it? You think we're going to beat the Buffalo Bills, who are one of the hottest teams in the league? What are we doing? Like, I think the Steelers showed up. I think it was overall a good competitive game. And the total yards, 324 for Pittsburgh, 368 for Buffalo. It's similar. Yeah. The problem is we gave up the ball in their territory. They got scores without having to drive the length of the field.
Yeah, I mean, all of what you said is certainly true. How do you think? I'll just ask you, how do you think that game goes if Pittsburgh doesn't fumble the ball twice there? You get that, obviously that Pickens fumble put them right there on the 30-yard line, and they go in and score the next play, and then you get the big play from Pat Freiermuth where he fumbles on the play. Actually, no, they didn't get the ball back on that play.
They got the ball.
They didn't get it. Did they?
No, we retained the ball.
Right, yeah, yes, yeah. Okay, yeah, I forgot about So, but so if Pittsburgh cleans up their turnovers in this game, how do you think this game goes?
Honestly, I don't. The Pat Freiermuth, we got the ball back. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
The Buffalo Bills, I don't have the specific stats on this, but just watching it, they never drove the length of the field except for, I believe, the one drive where Josh Allen had the 52-yard rush, which was a broken play, a play that he got out of there. They maybe their first drive of the game.
Their first drive, they went down. Yeah, it was like an 8-play drive.
Right. Other than that, they never got down the field if they started beyond their 50. Never. The Steelers' defense played well, in my opinion. They did what they needed to do. It just came down to we gave them the ball in their territory, and they capitalized, and that's fine. They're the better team. That's how you win games. That's how you lose games by Pittsburgh. But this game is substantially closer than what it looks like, and I'm just gonna have to say that for sure. We were down 21-0, went 21-7 into halftime. That could have been a 14-7 if Pickens doesn't fumble. and then we score. I believe it would have been 13-17 if you just leave it at the without the touchdown off that. And then Mason throws the pick in the red zone. Very odd little interception. It kind of just bounced into the guy's hand like perfectly. I don't even know if he was really ready for the ball to come. He kind of was just playing Deontay's hands, and it just bounced straight into him. And I mean, good on him, no doubt about it. But I mean, the ball should have been placed a little bit farther out in front of Deontay, so he didn't get picked. But it is what it is, and that's once again, those 2 turnovers cost us the game effectively. I think the game was close enough to reach if we didn't turn the ball over there.
Yeah. I don't know if Pittsburgh would have had the guys to be able to get it done in Buffalo,
Yeah, sure.
even if they didn't turn the ball over the ways they did, and I think you would agree with that. But with Buffalo, like if I were a Buffalo fan, I wouldn't be necessarily content with this game because like you said, you get the big play from Josh Allen, you get the 52-yard touchdown run, you get the drive to start the game where they march right down the field, but then after that their offense kind of seemed like the same offense that Buffalo fans were concerned with back before they fired Ken Dorsey. It's just so, I don't know. It's like they seem to almost in a sense they lack a sense of urgency. They get very comfortable with being up just 2 scores. And I don't know if that's a play caller issue. I don't know if that's a Josh Allen issue. I don't know what it is, but like you can never be comfortable with a lead with Buffalo, and I think they get comfortable too easily. And then you get games like this where I don't think anyone disagrees that Buffalo is more than 2 scores better than Pittsburgh is. They have so much talent. I mean, this is a team that should be blowing out the teams that aren't the Ravens, the Chiefs. I mean, we all know they're a top team, but they're 11-6 for a reason. It's because they don't play. They play down to their competition every week.
Yeah, I think a big part of that was once they got ahead, they started trying to run the ball, which is what most teams do. But the Steelers' front 7 is not a team that you can just constantly run on. I mean, even with the 17 linebackers the Steelers had to play this season, they're gonna protect the run game. They do. Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, Larry Ogunjobi, those guys are good run defenders. So you can't do it. And once again, without TJ Watt, the Steelers are 1-10. That's all you need to know. Let's be real. That ended this game before it started. Let's be real. And the fact that they competed, and to me, as someone who watched them and for as many years as I have, you go into this game, you kind of expect to lose. You're out without TJ Watt, and you competed more than Dallas did to Green Bay, who was the favorite. You competed more than Philly did to Tampa, which we'll get into in a moment. You competed more than Cleveland did to Houston, which was a better matchup. And we were the biggest underdog of the weekend. That's a win to me. I'm going to be honest. We weren't supposed to be here. That's a win to me.
Yeah, certainly competed better than some of those teams did for sure.
Mason played well. He hit a few big shots, 3rd and long, strike to George Pickens over the middle where he got smacked. He reflected that one. Mason played well. He did his job, what he needed to do. But one thing I will say, I want to go into kind of leading into next week for Buffalo, is the injuries are just constantly adding up. They got back to Quan Jones in this game. Then Rasul Douglas and I believe Tyrell Dodson and Taylor Rapp all did not play this game. They were not suited up. And then they lose Terrell Bernard on seems to be like an ankle sprain, I believe, which is better news than what it's supposed to be. But Balin Spector, another linebacker, Christian Benford, a corner, and then Teron Johnson apparently left with a head injury. They need to study the Bills' defensive injuries every year because it is obnoxious. It is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. They're going to need some of those guys back playing Kansas City next week. Not that Kansas City has the offense that they normally do, but Kansas City's got the defense, and we'll have to see. It'll be a matter of who can overcome the other team's defense next week whenever they face off against each other.
Right. Yeah,
but other than that, I mean, this game kind of went the way that I think we expected it to. Buffalo, they look like Buffalo. It looks like a typical Buffalo game.
And, I mean, Josh Allen did play well. 70% completion, 200 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and then a 50-yard scrambles, 74 total yards rushing, a touchdown there. I mean,
Yeah.
Josh Allen, there is no one like him in the league. He is the most dominant quarterback there is. No one has that run-pass combo he does. It's certainly special.
Yeah, that 52-yard run was
No
something.
one does that. As the announcer said, Lamar, Mahomes, Kyler, they're sliding after they get the first down. They are. Josh Allen put his shoulder through a freaking linebacker, man. Like, what in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I watched that play and I'm just like, that's one of those jaw-dropping plays. You're just like, he's not supposed to score on that. That's not. And then he just takes off. He gets through the second level of defense and then he outruns the D-backs. It's like, what are you supposed to like? How do you even? As a defensive back or as a defensive player, I should just say, like when you see a quarterback running, it's not the same as when you see a wide receiver or a running back running with the ball. But with Josh Allen, you have to treat him like he's a running back or a tight end with the ball in his hand. You can't be conservative and assume that he's just going to slide because he's clearly not. I mean, he'll run through you, and there's something to that that's extremely hard to defend against.
Very much so. Very much so. So I guess we go into our final game, Tampa Bay, Philly. This, to me, wasn't as shocking as Dallas Green Bay, but was definitely a very big shock. I thought we both had Philly winning, and I definitely don't think we had Philly getting trounced. I don't think anyone had Philly getting trounced like they did. It was not good. Not good.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, as the week went on, I kind of got more unsure about Philly, but then I'd remind myself, oh, it's Tampa Bay. It's Tampa Bay. You can't expect them to go. I thought Baker was going to lose the game for him. I thought it was just going to be a matter of Baker couldn't make the plays for him, and Tampa's defense wasn't going to be able to, even with AJ Brown being out, be able to resist Philly's offense. But gosh, Philly. I don't know. I mean, Baker played phenomenally, and he had some big plays from his receivers that certainly helped him out. But he goes 22 of 36, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. I mean, what more can you ask for him? Gosh, and Philly wasn't even able to really shut down their run game either. You get Rashad White 18 for 72. Tampa averaged 4 yards a carry, and we all know that Philly's got the issues in the secondary, but there's one thing they should be able to do well, it's stop the run, and they weren't able to do that. But that wasn't the issue with the game. It was the secondary the whole time, and it was bad tackling. They could not run. Tampa Bay they've also got a great run defense. But man, I mean, Jalen Hurts didn't look great. When he got pressured, he did not look good. And I think that's really what won it for Tampa Bay is that they were able to pressure Jalen Hurts, and he wasn't able to be the playmaker that they needed him to be to, hang up points on him on Tampa's defense.
That's been their story all year. Their play calling has not been good. Jalen Hurts is back there in shotgun every single play. If you listen to any Eagles fans, they're furious with it. All they do is shotgun and maybe hand off here and there, but I mean, it's all that. Why don't you run any play action? Why don't you, have him under center any? There's got to be more to it, and I have to agree with that. I think one of the most shocking things of this game, though, was the fact that they missed on the tush push. 34 of 37 on the tush push when needing 1 yard or less. 1 yard or less. So pretty much automatic. I mean, I don't know what that percentage is, but that's pretty high. And it's rough. And one thing I want to point out for Tampa Bay is they were slaughtered by drops early in the game. They had 6 drops in the first half, 3 from Cade Otton, 1 by Mike Evans, and 1 from Chase Edmonds and Rashad White. That all of them were just relatively easy. I mean, the Mike Evans one was a deep ball, and it kind of just lofted over him. And I don't know if he really knew where the ball was exactly, but either way, just drops. It was very rough, and they still went through it. That's usually something that when you get that and you lose your headspace in the game, that's a killer for you mentally. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a good one there. Anything else you got in this game?
I mean, it was I wasn't necessarily shocked to see Tampa Bay win the game. It was just that Philly was not there to play. They didn't even
Yeah.
show up.
I think they lost this game
Um,
a week or 2 weeks ago when they lost to Arizona or New York. I mean,
yeah, I
they
mean
were not the same since.
what have they lose 5 of their last 6 games
I believe so.
that they've played. I mean, they're people look at Philly and they see the Super Bowl runner ups from last year, and it's not the same team. And I think you can contribute it to losing their OC and their DC to go take head coaching positions, and whoever they got to fill those positions
Yeah.
is nowhere near the level of play callers that Steichen and Gannon were.
Yeah, I want to get your quick take on this before we wrap up this segment. Nick Sirianni's job's been in question by some in the media and some around. What do you think about that?
I think it's a little silly.
Yeah.
You know,
Let a team go to the Super Bowl last year.
yeah. Give them a chance to. I don't know. I imagine they'll their DC will be gone for sure. Um, I'd have to imagine if he's not already. I really don't know. But he'll I don't, OC maybe go get someone else, or you just run it back, because this game could have gone differently with AJ Brown being healthy. But
Sure.
give them you can't. They went 11-6, and obviously you don't want to lose in the wild card after you come off of a Super Bowl appearance the year before. But you can't let go of your head coach that quickly, because
Absolutely.
at that point you're sending a message to other candidates where you're saying, hey, we're not giving you more than one season. If you don't live up to our expectations after one single season, even if the previous year you get to the Super Bowl, next year if you don't quite make it where we think we ought to be, then you're gone.
Right.
So I expect Sirianni to be back next year.
I agree with that. Let's go ahead and get into our next segment and our off-season hot takes. So we both have 3 of them, I believe. And I'll let you go ahead and start off with your first one.
Which one do I want to start with? I'll pair the last 2 together because they're roughly similar. So my first hot take, I'll call it a hot take because it normally does not happen in history, but with this upcoming draft, I think we'll see, once again, like 3 years ago, I think we'll see 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. Those 5, this might more so be the hotter part of this take, but those 5, I believe, will be Caleb Williams, obviously, Drake May, obviously, Jaden Daniels as well. I think those 3 are generally the consensus picks for first round quarterbacks. Then the other 2 that I think get into the first round are going to be Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy. I think Penix will be left out of that conversation. I don't think he'll be a first round quarterback. The injury concerns obviously hold him out. That makes it really tough for a team to commit to him with a first round pick. Also, him being a little bit older, which I think is less of a narrative that matters to front offices as people might think it is. He's not like a 28-year-old rookie or something crazy like that. He's only like 23. He'll be 24 by the time this next season starts. But he has a smaller kind of stature. If you look at him, he's kind of a skinnier guy, which is a little bit concerning. He's listed at 215 pounds, give or take, and I don't know if I believe that, honestly. But I don't know. I just don't really see it. It's part of my gut instinct. I don't know that I would be content. Say, for example, my New England Patriots will be drafting a quarterback, hopefully, and I would not be comfortable with us taking Michael Penix. I just don't really see it. I don't see him as a guy that's really going to pan out in the NFL, and I just don't see him being a first round pick. And those other guys, I would certainly much rather have in the first round.
Yeah, I'm yet to watch too much on Michael Penix, but I'm from what I've seen, I'm not the highest on him. Maybe he slips in the back of the first round, but I would not be shocked to see him go in the second. All right.
Hmm.
Do you want to take your other ones, or you want me to go next?
I'll let you go next. I'll let
Okay.
you go next.
This one, not super crazy. I think this one's actually pretty possible, honestly. But I'm going to say that Devontae Adams ends up a Jet. One way or another, he's on the Jets this next season. There was a lot of talk that, Garrett Wilson changed his number from 17 to 5 so he could have Devontae come in. I don't think so. I think he was just going back to his college number because of the whole single-digit thing they opened up a couple years ago. But yeah, I think Devontae does end up a Jet one way or another.
I mean, I could definitely see that. It'd be, who knows how to make it happen. Because you know, Vegas they're gonna demand a high price for Devontae.
Well, I think
But
there's a chance that because of this season, he's not that expensive. I mean, because his contract is already pretty big. Then
yeah.
the Jets are going to keep their first overall pick, I believe, this year because they need a tackle very badly. They're going to find
Hmm.
whatever tackles available, take them. And with Devontae had a bit of a down year this year. Still had like 1,000 yards, but whatever. For a guy like him, that's not super great. And he didn't just seem to play well game in and game out. But I think it's possible they only have to pay maybe a second, maybe a fourth added on that, something like that, and they might be able to land him because of his age, his contract, and all those things.
Yeah, I mean, if they can get him for a cheaper price, then maybe he's truly worth. Then by all means, go get it, go get him. Um, that's I think last week we talked a little bit about the Jets offense, how outside of their top two playmakers, Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson, there's really not a lot there. So
No,
so adding the familiarity of Devontae Adams as well as the skill of Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers coming back next year, that could be huge for him.
absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your next one?
All right, so my next take is kind of extremely painful to uh, to admit, but I got Dallas hiring Bill Belichick as their next head coach. It hurts my heart to see Bill Belichick no longer in the Patriots blue and red. And it hurts my heart even more that Dallas could have a head coach spot opening and Belichick's available, and um, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of other jobs around the NFL right now that are super appealing. I mean,
He
first one that
apparently
comes to
interviewed with
mind
the
is,
Falcons.
yes, he did. He did interview with the Falcons, which I don't know how appealing that job is. They'll have a high pick, so they can take a quarterback this year if they want to, which is interesting. They've got some good things there. Um, and then the Chargers is another one that comes to mind, but I think they're going all in on the Jim Harbaugh uh,
I agree.
potential to hire him. So if he chooses to, I can see him staying at Michigan.
Hmm.
Um, However, JJ McCarthy declaring kind of makes me think that there's a decent chance that Harbaugh does leave, and if he does leave, I think he'll be a Charger. So if I take the Chargers job off the table, and then if I say that Dallas decides to move on from McCarthy, which is very doable, then I see no reason why Belichick wouldn't take that Dallas job, and of course Dallas is going to want Belichick. There's a few moving parts there that would have to take place. Um, and as much as I don't want to admit it, I think it'd be a huge hire and something that Jerry Jones would certainly welcome
I
a
agree.
huge hire like that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, my second one is going to be I have three players here: Mike Evans, Chris Jones, and Daniil Hunter. So Mike Evans, the Buck, Chris Jones, the Chief, and Daniil Hunter, the Viking. Two out of three of them, at least, are off the team next year. Two out of three of those guys are somewhere else. Don't know if it'll be Mike Evans, Chris Jones, Daniil Hunter, Mike Evans. Did I say Mike Jones a minute ago? I don't know. Either way, two out of three, or maybe all three, are not on the same team they are this year.
Interesting.
I
Interesting.
just
Okay.
that's a bit of a specific one, so maybe, but I'm not going to go too far into that because it's a lot there. But I think all two at least of those guys are not on the same team.
Yeah, I could certainly see Mike Evans moving on.
Yeah,
Um,
they're paying them both.
Yeah. Although I don't know, I don't know. They've punched their ticket to the divisional round, so maybe I don't know, maybe Mike Evans' thought on where the franchise is at right now changes, and he's like, maybe I'll stick around. I don't know. I don't know how much Mike Evans really likes Tampa Bay. It's Tampa Bay, the location's fantastic being down there in warm Florida. I don't know. He might want to change of scenery though, go somewhere where he has a better opportunity at making a Super Bowl run, like at Kansas City. They need a wide receiver one for sure.
Yeah.
I could really see it though. He's been there for a long time. It could be time for a change. And then Chris Jones has had the contract issues with Kansas City for a while. I believe they tagged him this past offseason
I think they might have got a 1-year extension.
or a
I think
1 year deal. Same thing.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And it'll come down to whether or not Kansas City chooses to put their money in Chris Jones, or if they feel that it's best for them to allocate all that money elsewhere, maybe in investing in some skill players, because obviously Chris Jones is going to demand a large contract. And then Daniil Hunter, you can kind of put him in the same boat as Chris Jones. He had a big comeback season this year.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to demand a huge contract, being a top tier edge rusher. I'd lean towards more so Minnesota bringing him back, just because they don't quite have as many guys like Kansas City does to have to pay. Yeah. I think it might come down to what they choose to do with Kirk, and what Kirk demands from the Vikings contract wise. Does he take a pay cut, or does he extend that? Does he want to extend that $40 million a year contract a year further? I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see even just two of those guys, even just one of those guys moving. That'd be a big move for any team. Yeah, that'd be a big move for any team to get one of those guys. Those are three extremely dominant players.
Right. All right. What's your next hot take?
All right, my next one. You're not gonna like it. You're not gonna like it. I think Mike Tomlin's going to step away from coaching temporarily. I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna take a year off at least. It's just been. I think the repeated years of just good enough to get into the playoffs, but then not having the success after getting into the playoffs. I feel like that's got to take a toll on him, and you can take it for whatever you wish. His little yesterday in his press conference post game, walking out right after the reporter asked him the question, "Oh, you got 1 year left on your contract." Just kind of bringing that up to him, and then he walked away. I think that could just as easily be him avoiding the question, just not. I don't blame. He doesn't want to talk about his contract right after the playoff loss.
Mike T does nothing speculative. Just ever. So no, that's all that is.
Sure, yeah. But we've seen guys like Sean Payton step away and then come back into coaching, and I think that's something that Mike Tomlin could potentially pursue. He's been in Pittsburgh for years now. I believe, when did he step in 2005, 2006, give or take?
It was 17 years.
So
whatever that makes.
2006. He's been. That's 17 years, and it's been all right lately, but it seems to be that there's a hump that they just haven't quite been able to get over. And I don't know. I think Tomlin could certainly pursue maybe a year-long break, do something else, maybe do some broadcasting or something like that. He'd be a great personality for broadcasting.
I think he'd be good at it, but I don't think there's any chance he ever does TV. I just cannot see that man doing TV. He ain't made for TV. he'd be interesting because of who he is, but like I don't think he could do it. I just don't see it. I think he's the type of guy who I don't think he steps away because, especially at the time, you have 2 years on this quarterback, Kenny Pickett, that you drafted, and so you have reason to not necessarily be a Super Bowl contender right now. Most teams aren't a Super Bowl contender in the first quarterback's 2 years. Yes, it's been a little under-improved, but there's stuff to work on that's very, very laid out for you. You have to figure out the quarterback position right now, and you do that, you might be as far into the playoffs as anybody else. So I don't know, but he's a guy that I think he'll coach for forever. Maybe he takes a year off at some point, but he'll coach for forever. I don't think he ever does TV. I just don't know about that.
Maybe not TV. Maybe not TV, but I think he might take. I think he might just take a year to just step back, sort of, just spend a year taking a break. It's been a long time, and it's been a while since they've been contenders. And like I was saying before, I don't know that it's as much about the situation that they're in right now as it is that it's been so long since they've really been contenders. Even in those years when they had Big Ben and AB and Lev Bell were all at the top of their game, they still weren't able to get over that hump. And it's been so long since their last Super Bowl appearance, Super Bowl win even. I think those years piled on could be bearing a lot of weight on him, and force him into a place where he's like, let me just step back, take a year to just take a break. I just need a break. Give me 1 year, and then come back a little bit more refreshed and ready to do whatever he needs to get the Steelers over that hump.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
It's a hot take. It's a hot take.
Yeah, it is. It's a hot one. That's a hot one. I'll go to my final one, and I'm going to loop 2 in here. I had a backup one just in case maybe they got a little intertwined. But my main one is someone, I don't know who, but someone trades up for a quarterback in this draft, which isn't too crazy. It happens relatively often. But I'm going to loop 2 in here, and I'm going to say these simultaneously happen. Not only will someone trade up for a quarterback, Justin Fields will also get traded. That is both things I think will happen in the 2024 draft, whether it's Justin Fields getting traded in a month or on draft night. One of them, it'll happen at least by then.
I could certainly see it. I'm firmly on the boat that he'll be a Falcon next year, but I think that's just me tying too many things together. He's from Georgia. They are in a place where they need a quarterback, so it kind of just makes too much sense. And obviously Chicago would look to move off, but then at the same time, Chicago's looking to move off of him for a reason. His contract's almost up, and he hasn't shown a lot of promise as a quarterback. Right. So then you'd have to consider, well, why would Atlanta want to take him on whenever they've got, I believe they're drafting 8th, I believe.
Yeah, that's probably potential Daniels.
They could be that team that trades up for a quarterback.
Right.
So it wouldn't be them trading for Fields. So yeah, I mean, Fields will certainly be on the move. I think Caleb Williams is a bear, unless he pulls something crazy and decides to say, if you draft me, I'm not playing for you.
Yeah, John Elway.
Yeah. Regardless, they will have a rookie quarterback going into next season. Justin Fields will not be their starter, and therefore they're going to look to move him. Yeah. And I don't know for sure that Atlanta will be that team, but I think someone will look to go get him. So I can get on board with that.
Raiders, Vikings could trade up for a quarterback depending on Kirk's situation.
Yeah, Denver could be one of those teams. If they're going to move off of Russell Wilson, which all signs point to that. They could maybe they could either be that team that trades up. I have my own theory about that. Either they could be that team that trades up to get a quarterback, like Sean Payton might want, or maybe they go get Justin Fields and Sean Payton says, okay, I think I see something in Justin Fields. Maybe let me work with him for a year. I would lean towards Sean Payton going and getting a rookie quarterback, but there's a lot of teams that fall in. Either they could be the ones that go get Fields for a year, or they could also be trading up to go get a rookie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty good for our hot takes, though. I think we should go straight into our divisional round predictions from here. I'm going to
Mm,
try to do this in order of the day they are played. Let's go with starting out. Houston Texans go into Baltimore. They
mm,
are 9-point dogs, according to most apps. Caesar Sportbook, Bet365, DraftKings. FanDuel
man,
has them at a minus 8.5, or Baltimore at that. They're plus 8.5, obviously. Um,
mm,
you know, I think they could compete. I think they really could
yeah,
compete. What do you got here?
man, that's a lot of points. They're not. We talked about it a little bit last week. Week one, we get the Baltimore Houston matchup, and now we get it again here in the divisionals. So we'll either see history repeat itself, or maybe the Texans reverse history and they go into Baltimore and come away with a win. Um, I find that to be a little bit less likely, um, just given how dominant Baltimore's been this year. Um, this is tough because I love, I'm a sucker for the underdog. I really want to see Houston make a run, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome Baltimore's defense in Baltimore. Baltimore's well rested. It'll, I mean, I certainly think that Houston has the defense to contain Baltimore's offense and Lamar Jackson. With that being said, like most of these games with Houston, it'll come down to is the CJ Stroud that we've seen all season gonna show up, or are we gonna see that week one CJ Stroud who looks like a rookie,
Yeah,
right? Baltimore made him look like a rookie quarterback. And I don't think we're gonna see him stoop down that low. I think he's much better now than he was that week one. But I have to go with Baltimore. You can't with where Houston was supposed to be this year and where they are now. You can't assume that they're just gonna keep riding that. At some point, it's probably gonna fizzle out. And going into Baltimore and getting a win in the divisional round of the playoffs is an extremely tall task. And
absolutely.
I'd have to say that this is where their luck runs out.
Yeah, I'm gonna say. I mean, Baltimore does not have the best of luck in the playoffs ever. They have. That's the reason why I'm never too high on them. I don't care that they're the one seed. I believe they were the one seed a few years ago, and they got beat up by a team they weren't supposed to get beat up by too. Uh, and CJ Stroud has played well. Rookie quarterback makes it hard to trust in for sure. The offense has looked well when just most of the season, but like you said, the defense has also played up as well. Baltimore being really off 2 weeks of rest because
Hmm.
obviously last week they didn't have a game, and then the week prior, week 18, they sat pretty much all their starters and some guys who were just teetering on that injury bug. So
Hmm.
I'm going to honestly be a hater here to Baltimore, and I'm going to say Houston wins. I think they go in there and Baltimore is not ready. I think Lamar has the struggles once again of not being ready in the playoffs when having too much rest. And I'm mainly saying this because if something continues to happen, then why would it change? This is effectively everything the same. They have a new offensive coordinator, but they still run the mess out the ball. Either way, I just don't see. I just see it being the same scenario from every before that they don't get it done in the playoffs. And there's a reason why maybe many people didn't want Lamar going out of last year in the offseason when he was basically open for trade and no one really came to the table to take him. I think there's reasons for that. So I'm going to stick with Houston and be a hater to Baltimore.
Yeah, I'd love to see Houston win. Obviously, honestly, I love seeing them overcome the preseason expectations. But
Yeah.
I think that's my heart speaking too much. I don't know how much logic that is speaking for me. So I'm gonna have to ride with the favorites there with Baltimore.
It's my heart speaking against the Ravens, but it's also the logic of Baltimore doesn't win in the playoffs. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a double sided thing there. Moving on to our next game, though, San Fran and Green Bay. You got the Niners as minus 10 favorites across the board. I mean, that's a lot of points, and that's 3 more points than Green Bay was under to Dallas. They were only a touchdown difference there, 7.5 maybe. But this is it's weird because, you thought maybe they'd get handled by Dallas, and I think everybody's going to probably go into this week saying, well, are they going to get handled by the not? Well, wait, they just said that to Dallas, and it didn't happen. So where are we at with this one?
I think San Francisco is just a different animal. They're not, we saw them beat up on Philly and Dallas this season. I think they're my pick to make it to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. Um, and I think coming off of a week of rest, getting the underdog Packers coming to San Francisco to play them, I don't see a world where they go into San Francisco and Jordan Love and their offense outplay the Shanahan-led offense with McCaffrey and Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle with Brock Purdy playing at the level that he is. And you also got that San Francisco pass rush with Nick Bosa on one side and Chase Young on the other. I don't see a way that the Packers can get it done in San Francisco. And I would have said the same thing about Dallas last week. I didn't see a way that they would go into Dallas and get the win, but
Absolutely.
Dallas and San Francisco are not on the same level. They're not. They're San Francisco's a tier above, and I think if San Francisco doesn't make a Super Bowl run, it's not the Packers who are stopping them.
Yeah. I'm going to have to agree there. Packers, they have the toughest route, and that's what happens when you get the 7 seed.
Yep.
Dallas was a tough opponent,
Mhm.
even if they didn't look like it. Now you get
Mhm.
the Niners. It's just going to be tough. I don't see a way they are able to pull it off. I mean, I would have said that last week. I'm pretty sure I did. But, even if they play super well, there
Yeah.
is a lot to handle on that offense of San Francisco. The one
Mhm.
thing I will say, to leave a little glimpse of hope for Green Bay, Jordan Love looks like a star quarterback. Looks like it. He plays like it. Brock Purdy, I don't think is shown that he's a star quarterback, and star quarterbacks win games in the playoffs. That's how things work. So there's a glimmer of hope, but I will go with San Francisco in this one.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next game I believe these will be on Sunday now. The last two were on Saturday.
Mhm.
Tampa Bay and Detroit opening up at a -6 Detroit favor. That's a lot wider than I expected, to be honest. What you got here?
Yeah. This is really interesting. Tampa's going to be riding high off of that big win against Philly. Um, it's an interesting game. Man, I don't know who I mean, I think I just have to go with Detroit. They're clearly the better team. I think it'll be a close one. This is really similar to that Rams game. Um, I'd pick Detroit, but I think it's going to be a close one. Um, I think the Bucks will have success on offense. They're gonna be able to throw the ball some, and they've got a stellar run defense. So this game is going to be entirely on Jared Goff whether or not he can come through and get it done for him. He did just enough last week against the Rams to get it done. Um, there is a way we saw last week that there is a way for Detroit to win without their pass defense being stellar. They give up plenty of big plays to the Rams in the pass game, yet they still are able to come out with the win. I just wonder if they're going to be able to do it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to choose to put my faith in Jared Goff and the Lions offense as opposed to Baker and the Bucks offense, and I'm going to say that I'm gonna pick the Bucks -6 or +6, I should say. Um, I'm gonna pick them to cover, but I'd take the Lions to win.
I got you.
Narrow game.
This one is tough. I think it is somewhat similar to the last week game for Detroit. However, I think Tampa Bay is just – I don't think they're as good as the Rams. I think Matthew Stafford is a legitimate top 10 quarterback. The way he's able to conduct an offense is unlike most other quarterbacks. And I think Baker Mayfield, I'm a Baker Mayfield fan. I am. I like him a lot. I think he's a starter in this league, but I don't think he is capable of taking a team like this too far, honestly. And I
Hmm.
think this is gonna boil down to me to a coaching battle. Todd Bowles has not had a good track record as a head coach in the NFL. I'm honestly shocked he's done this well, to be quite honest. And
Yeah.
Dan Campbell looks like a really good coach. I'm gonna say Detroit wins, so we're both there. But I think this is gonna be somewhat similar to maybe like the Bills and the Steelers game from last week, where it looks really it looks bad on paper, but it's really close at the same time. Like in the way it plays out, there's
Hmm.
a time where maybe they're only a score difference, 24-17, but they get a final touchdown to go up and win by 14 or so.
That's generally how some of Tampa Bay's, maybe if you're looking at the box scores, uglier looking losses have been this year. I think back to earlier in the year when they played Philly, or was it Buffalo? Or did they play Buffalo? It was one of those two teams they played. They played one of those two teams, and they were Tampa was contained for the entire game, but the other, whether it was Philly or Buffalo, they were never able to completely pull away from them.
Yeah.
So I could see it going that way as well. That's sort of how Tampa's been this year.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go into our final game of the week. Kansas City Buffalo. Honestly, this to me is the best game possible. This is
Hmm.
as someone who is a Steelers fan, I'm happy that this is the playoff we get. We lost, but we get to see another Kansas City Buffalo chapter, which is
Yep.
debatably the best matchup in the league right now.
Hmm.
You get a 2.5-point favorite in Buffalo. This is the first time that Patrick Mahomes has played an away playoff game. That's huge, and I
Yeah.
mean that could change a lot because when you're used to something so much, especially how much they go to the playoffs, how much they go deep into the playoffs. He's probably played upwards of 15 playoff games at this point, I'd assume, if I'm kind of counting right in my head, 3 games a year.
15,
That's about
20. He's up there,
something
yeah.
like that. He's played all of them at home except for the Super Bowls, and it's just that might be a huge difference. It really might be. So, what do you think here?
Yeah. Man, it'll it's such a great matchup, like you're saying. I mean, either team could take this one, regardless of it being Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game,
Yeah,
aside from neutral site games. Um, they struggled on offense this year, as we've talked about numerous times. Buffalo's got plenty of defensive starters who are banged up. This game it could really go either way. Um, I think man, I'm gonna have to give the upper hand to Buffalo though. They're playing as well as anyone in the league right now. Um, I think Buffalo will be able to. I think they'll be able to keep Kansas City from pounding the rock and and taking control of the game that way.
yeah,
Um, and I Kansas City's had to have a great defense at times this year though. The defense has not looked so great.
hmm
Um, I don't think they'll be able to contain Josh Allen that well. Maybe Josh Allen doesn't go for a career day, but the combination of Josh Allen's dominance and playing at home, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been as dominant this year due to the offense the skill guys that he's got around him. I'd have to narrowly give Buffalo the upper hand here, and I'm gonna pick them to win.
yeah. We obviously saw this matchup earlier in the year, and I'm gonna be quite honest with you. I've never been a Patrick Mahomes fan because I don't like when teams just constantly win. Didn't like your Patriots when they were constantly winning. Don't really care for them so much now. I mean, it's fine because they're not winning nothing. They're not my way. But Kansas City, I'm not. And in that game where he had to be restrained from a ref, had to be, the way he acted after the game to Josh Allen, I lost pretty much all respect for him. Beyond the point, just who does that? Josh Allen didn't do that to you whenever he lost on a coin flip a few years ago. So, whatever. Um, you know, I think this year is Buffalo's year. I've said it from the beginning. Go back on my channel and check out how many times I've called Buffalo when they were 5-5. I think I still called them the Super Bowl, my Super Bowl contender from the AFC. And I'm going to stick with it. I think this is a game that starts off a little slow. Both teams get a little clunky. It's going to be better weather than last week, so nothing that these two teams aren't used to. They're both in very
Mm-hmm.
cold areas, and after a while, I think Josh Allen breaks it open, and I think this game he proves himself to be a legitimate number 2 quarterback in the league. Mahomes still is number 1. Let's be real, but um, and he wins this game. I think they win by 2 touchdowns. I think it could be like Steelers Bills where it's close, but it's also not in terms of score. They clean it up in the late part of the game. Mahomes has had a lot of people talk about Josh Allen's turnovers. Mahomes has had a lot of turnovers himself this year. I believe Allen has 17 picks and Mahomes has 14 or 15, but we don't hear about that too much. So I think that's a factor, and I think the skill guys are, obviously going to be outmatched by even some of Buffalo's backups because Kadarius Toney's just simply not that good. And I think a really key part of this game is going to be Jordan Poyer / Micah Hyde on Travis Kelce. How much can they do to limit him? Good news is for Buffalo, those 2 guys are 2 of the better safeties in the league. So
Mm-hmm.
they have a matchup in their hand that they can try to win early. And I think it happens. I think Buffalo runs this game out. And I think this game, Buffalo proves himself to be, people get scared of them after this game. So with that
Yeah.
being said, that would set up in your predictions, San Francisco, Detroit. That's same as me. Both San Francisco and Detroit for each of us. But Buffalo, Baltimore for you, and Buffalo, Houston for me. We'll get into the predictions of that next week, depending on who wins those games this weekend. And I think that's it for this episode. Anything you want to
Mm-hmm.
add to this episode? Anything about anything happened this weekend you'd like to mention or anything?
I don't think so. I think we covered just about
Yeah,
everything.
I do have one question that
Yeah.
I don't want to take too long on, but
Yeah.
the noise of the Cowboys losing, potentially cutting McCarthy. Now there's talk of getting rid of Dak even because I pulled this up. Um, Dak Prescott has an out this year in his contract where they save a lot of money if they get rid of him. And this guy, this was clearly Dallas's best year to potentially win a Super Bowl since probably the last time they won a Super Bowl in 92 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
This was their best chance, and I don't think that's very debatable. Then you get their offensive line. They have 3 All-Pro offensive linemen this year. They didn't come to play. CeeDee Lamb seemed like he dropped the first 4 balls that he was thrown, and he's supposed to be one of the best receivers in the league right now. What's happening there? The defense, Micah Parsons, no-showed. Dak Prescott, no-showed. And this is a consistent factor for Dak. So what do you think anything of that? Do you think he's gone?
Yeah. I mean, I think McCarthy getting the boot certainly be more likely. Um, I mean, it really, the question with it, which is always the question with getting rid of a more highly touted quarterback, is what are you moving on to?
That's
How
my
are you
thoughts.
upgrading? Um, and you don't have an Aaron Rodgers on the market right now like there was last year.
Yeah,
Um, I think if they choose to move off of him, it yeah, I mean, like realistically, who are you getting that's better than Dak? That's not a rookie.
yeah,
And then with the rookies, there's no certainty that any one of those rookies is going to be better than Dak. The only guy who you can maybe look to and say he could be better than Dak is Caleb Williams, and then that would depend on the Chicago. Chicago's got control here. If they want Caleb Williams, he's his. He's theirs.
yeah.
Um, I think it'd be awfully bold for them to get rid of Dak. But I think they only get rid of him if they're in control of getting someone who they firmly believe will be better than Dak, and
Yeah,
I don't know if that's likely.
yeah.
Um,
He
he had, he
part of
he
the
he just he now I will say he did just come off of his best season of his career,
yeah,
albeit it's not the regular season that Dallas fans are troubled with, but it's the playoff success. Um, and they had some flaws going into this game outside of Dak. They have a generally soft defense that only they really are in their best form whenever they're up big and their pass rushers can pin their ears back and go get the quarterback and they can play aggressive. They're very soft in the middle part of that defense, their linebackers. They have to move down a safety to come play linebacker for 'em most of the year. So I think this team could look different if they firm up that defense more. But we're not here to talk about the defense. I don't see a world where they can move off of Dak and comfortably replace him with someone else
Yeah.
and get back to where they were this year.
I agree with that. I think it's few and far between. I think someone has to come open for this to happen. I think there has to be something that changes. The problem is Dak Prescott, you're paying him. And, I mean, I think at this point, yes, he had a great regular season, but we've all pushed for up until yesterday, we pushed Dak Prescott to, is this guy maybe top 5 because of how well he played it throughout the regular season? And he came crashing down yesterday because of his playoff record. He's now 2-5, and one of his wins was against a very shaky Tampa Bay team that year in the playoffs, where I believe it was Brady's
last year. It was it was Brady's last game,
which was a pretty poor effort in general. I mean, it's just not really a game to hang your hat on necessarily. But
no.
And you're paying that guy who is probably a mid-level quarterback that doesn't really win you anything $60 million next year. He has a $60 million cap hit, which I don't know who that's more than, but I'm going to tell you it's probably more than just about everybody.
It's a lot.
And after June 6th or June 1st, you get a dead cap savings of almost over half of that contract. You have $37 million in savings. You have to eat 25, but that's an out. However, the next year he's off contract. So I think they do stick with him for a year because it's only one more year. Yeah, you're paying him a lot, but you're where you are now. I think this is where you is. So that's just one thing I just saw interesting, and I wanted to bring it up. But either way, I think that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube. They'll be posted there every single week. We hope you keep tuning in week by week, and we'll see y'all next time.